Okay, well, good morning, members, and welcome to the Isle of Skye and Raasay Area Committee on Monday, the 14th of August. Any apologies for absence, Alistair?
There's no apologies, Chair.
Okay. Declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declarations of interest? Callum?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I want to make a transparency statement in terms of the I've even forgotten what it was. The item on the CRF funding, because I'm a trustee of a community trust which received funding in 2021 from that. But as it's for noting and for information, I'll remain in the meeting for that item, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the only one. Okay, I think there's somebody trying to get in, Alistair. Recess powers. The committee is asked to note that the recess powers granted by the Council at its meeting on 29th June 2023 did not require to be exercised in relation to the business of the Isle of Skye and Raasay Committee. Item 4, minutes of the previous two meetings. So we had a meeting on Monday the 22nd May and Monday 22nd of June, and they are for noting. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 5, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Local Committee Performance Report. Now my understanding is, Alistair, that we've got nobody from the fire service with us today because they're unavailable. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair. Yeah, unfortunately they couldn't make it. So if members could consider the reports, and if there's any questions, if I'll collate them and put to the fire officer on his return to work.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, members, looking at the report, can I ask if the members got any observations or questions that they want passed on?
Well, Chairman, just put my hand up first. Here we go. Then we go.
Councillor Miller?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just obviously the report makes quite good reading in a sense that there's been very little activity, but I just wondered maybe just to get some clarity on the figures of the availability of the crews, because it's obviously, well, in the past year it's obviously almost every time been looked quite good in the reports we've considered, but yet when you're out hearing some of the local crews talking about it, they don't seem to tally up with the availability that's shown in the reports. And I just wondered, well, it'd be nice to know just how accurate these reports are in that sense. And I was also I was hoping that the officer would be here today, because we had a good positive discussion at the last time he presented the report about the progress making in relocating the Portree fire station, for example. That was one of the positives that I think we had out of that last meeting, and I just wondered, we'd like to know if it would be good to have him maybe along our business meeting even, just to give us an update on any progress that has been made in that regard. And also, you might recall, Chairman, I think I raised it about the proposals to try and recommence flights from Broadford, and how that would perhaps involve, maybe would that give more leverage to have perhaps a full-time crew based on Skye, rather than relying on a volunteer fireman, a retained fireman, where they're at the moment having a struggle. Would it be a positive to have a career in the fire service? And I think that was sort of met, if I recall correctly, with a positive sort of reaction from the fire officer. I can't remember what his name is just now, but I just wondered, so that might be just some queries, Alistair, if you could pass them on, Chairman. I think it would be nice to get some reassurances. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Miller. Councillor Munro?
Thank you, Chair. In a similar vein to Councillor Miller, I look back at a report to Area Committee in November 2020, and that was my first Area Committee as an elected member. and it's the numbers of staff, male and female, and then was 47 in our retained units. Now it's down to 32. We've lost 15 in 3 years, or almost 3 years. That's a concern. I think it's a concern at many levels. It shows how many economically inactive people we have in our communities, which other sectors of the economy could attest to. And I also think where does this lead inevitably? Are we going to need a full-time force within our island to provide a service? It's just a point I think we should be considering now and going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. I think station availability is clearly the biggest challenge we've got from this report. And as I say, hopefully my colleague can come back and give us some reassurances, although I do know that they are trying very hard to recruit in all areas, and I think they've had open days in places like Dunvegan, and I don't know if that's managed to get additional staff or not. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot of the points I would have made have been picked up, regarding the station availability. It's highlights a concerning downward trend, which we've got to really try and address that. I think that's something that needs a lot of work put into it, and it does beg the question of is it time that we do have that full-time crew on Skye? And I think the answer to that, certainly from my perspective, is yes, it is. That's something that we should be absolutely pushing for. It's in the community's interest. It's a matter of community safety. But I think looking at this report generally, it's a positive report. It shows that there is very low instances in which case the fire service are required, which is, again, that's always a positive thing. And that just highlights I don't want to say the luck that we've had with these situations, but it's a matter of, well, these are cases where the fire service have had to attend, and thankfully they are very low, but it does not negate the need for having that availability of those stations there, and it does not negate the need for having a fire service that's available and ready to respond whenever it is needed. But I do think that we should be focusing on the positives, that it is very low numbers, and take that as a good sign. But no, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stewart. I suppose it's that old debate about the fire service being reactive as well as proactive, because there are educational benefits as well that the fire service can provide. The one question I'd like Alistair maybe passed on is in terms of RTCs, and it indicates that in 23-24 there's only been 2, but clearly that doesn't include July and August, so it'd be quite good to get the July and August figures, because I think everyone here appreciates how busy the roads are, probably the busiest I can remember them in certain parts of the island. And clearly RTCs and punctures are 2 different things, but I'd be surprised if the number of RTCs doesn't increase in July and August. So it might be quite good to understand these figures, Alistair. And finally, Councillor Miller.
Well, no, thank you for bringing that up, because I think I know this is the fire brigade report, but fire service report, but perhaps Alistair could maybe contact the Police Scotland as well, because I think a lot of the problems we're seeing on the roads accidents wise are perhaps not severe enough for the fire service to be called out, but the police have been called out. So it would be a useful statistic, Chairman, to find out as well from the police exactly how, what the figures are for this year. I don't know when we're due a police report at an area committee, but I think you've highlighted quite a severe issue here on Skye in the last during the whole summer. So it would be good to get some statistics from Police Scotland as well. It would be perhaps quite shocking.
Okay, Alistair, I assume that police report will be coming in November.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, members, I'm not seeing any other hands up. So in the absence of anyone from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, we've looked at the report, we've submitted questions, and we'll get some feedback at an area business meeting, but hopefully also at the next area committee. So it is a matter of public record as well. Okay, moving on to agenda item 6, infrastructure for Highland, Skye and Raasay. And I'm delighted to welcome Gary Smith from the council with us. And Gary's going to give us an update on the major projects that are happening on the island. So over to you, Gary.
Morning, everyone. Morning, members. I'll just share my screen and start the presentation. Just
Yeah, we're seeing that,
bear
Guy.
with me. Okay, that's yeah. Good morning. So I'll give you a short presentation, updating on progress on several capital projects on Skye and Raasay. The largest by far is Uig Harbour. At the moment, we've got a lot of our site team are out there at the moment supervising the works. So I'll spend probably most of the time on that project. But I'll keep you in touch with the other projects in Portree and one particularly in Skye and Raasay and the small vessels replacement programme. So just to give you to orientate yourself in terms of what I'm talking about at Uig. The contractor continues to work on the whole site. Just to give some context, the marshalling area is in yellow. The approachway works are in green here. The red area is the old pierhead, and I'll talk about some of the repairs that are going on in that in a moment. The orange area is the new link span, and again, I'll talk you through that. And the purple area is the new berthing structure. So I'll just this drone picture was taken just at the start of the month. I was on site last week. And the marshalling area has moved on a bit since even since this photo was taken a few weeks ago. So it's all going at pace. This area in here on the lower left hand section has all been cleared now. That's been taken up to level, and that's ready to start curbing works. All of the drainage is in. And all of the piling, all of the rock armour is complete. So we'll start that area will start looking like a marshalling area sometime soon. We're also going to be putting in some lighting on the lighting plinths, so that'll all start to look a little bit different. The building contract itself, there's a new terminal building is going in this central area here. That contract has now been re-tendered, and we'll get the tenders will return in about 6 weeks' time. So we'll be in a position to hopefully award that contract. That's just a artist's impression of the new ferry terminal building as it fits into the landscape. If we move on to some of the physical works that are going on on the marine structure, we've got the approachway. So this is the approachway. This is the existing approachway here, and we're doing a 6 metre wide widening of that structure. All of that area is now enclosed, so all of the precast units have been placed, all of the reinforcement has been fixed, and we're starting now to concrete these deck units. So we've done the first 3, and we're working our way back towards the shore side. That'll all be complete in the next probably 2 months or so. If we move on now to the berthing structure, so the berthing structure here, all of the piling work is complete, all of the marine piling work is complete. This area is continuing, we're continuing with it. Infill, all of the tie rods to give it structural stability are all in place. And that fill continues to be placed. We've actually started working on the precast units which link the old structure to the new. So all of the precast units along the berthing face will be in place shortly. In this image as well, we've got the new link span dolphins. So these dolphins are in and complete, and the support structure for the landward side of the link span bridge is also complete, and they're already in place for the installation of the link span later on this year. In this area here, we talked about the old pier section. So this outer pier section here needs to be strengthened. you can't actually see it in this picture, but what we've done is we've drilled through the existing deck and hung a support scaffold underneath, and we're doing the concrete repairs in this area, and again that'll be ready for the new link span when it's installed from October. The most critical upcoming activity on the site is the 6-week closure, which is planned to start at the end of October. And this is to replace the link span bridge, and all of that planning work is progressing well. I've got another meeting this afternoon speaking to the island communities about what that closure will look like, and what their CalMac will be represented at that, and they'll talk through what their alternative ferry services are for that period. So the link span itself is being fabricated in Poland at the moment, and as much of the mechanical and the hydraulic and electrical systems will all be fitted and prefabricated to that off-site, so that when we bring the bridge to site and it's lifted in on the 24th of November, it will be completed within that 6-week closure. This is just a shot of the new link span and fabrication. What you're seeing there is actually the bridge, and it's upside down. You're seeing the main support girders at either side, and that's the underside of the deck, and all of that work's on schedule for delivery for final installation. So I'll just move on to some of the other projects that we're working on within the project design unit. With the Portree Link Road, this scheme was granted planning permission in February this year. The scheme's proposed to comprise 290 metres of new 7.3 metre wide carriageway with footways, and two new roundabouts onto the existing road network, and to complete the link road around the back of Portree. At the moment, we're carrying out the detailed design, and that's ongoing to purify the planning conditions that we have for the site. And we're also liaising with the adjacent housing developers. Hopefully this work will be in a position to tender and be constructed in 2024. Just a quick update on Portree Harbour. As you know, the capital allocation for Portree Harbour was deferred in last year's capital programme. So for 23-24, that spending was deferred to future years. As I say, the programme earlier this year allocated it for the period 24-25 up until 28-29. When the new capital programme is confirmed with that figure, the allocation figure is confirmed, we'll then be able to proceed with the design and procurement of the repairs that are required at the harbour, because we've obviously surveyed the harbour, and the old stone harbour, the traditional section is needing some work, and we're also going to be carrying out some repairs to the piling of that existing structure. So when that budget is confirmed, we'll proceed with that work. Another one that we're working on at the moment is the Portree Cemetery extension. So the design is ongoing. The planning application was submitted earlier this year. So the proposal is to extend to the south side of the existing cemetery and provide a new 45 space car park. We will proceed with the detailed design and the tendering for that in 24-25. So that's that one. And the last project that we're working on is the small vessels replacement programme. That's not something that the Highland Council are doing, but we obviously own and maintain the infrastructure of the piers that serve piers and harbours that serve the Skye and Raasay route. So Transport Scotland and CMAL are proceeding with the design and procurement of new all-electric ferry vessels to serve certain routes which are served by the smaller vessels. Skye and Raasay is one of those routes. So what we've got to do as owner of the infrastructure is look at the increasing the electrical supply and infrastructure so that so the vessel can sit in Raasay and be charged overnight. So we're looking speaking with SSE and CMAL about the timing and programming for that. The CMAL have actually planned a public engagement session on Raasay in Raasay Community Hall on the 31st of August at 6:30. So I'm sure that's the invitations to that are already out, but that's organised by CMAL, and that's to describe and put a bit of flesh on the bones in terms of when they're planning to do that vessel replacement programme. So that's all of the projects that we're currently working on in Skye. But I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Okay, thanks very much, Gary. I think that shows a number of major projects that are happening, and we know that there are probably other projects as well that we'll be getting updates on in the future. And I'm sure members will have questions. So, members, I'll hand over to you. Councillor Miller.
It's not really questions, I suppose, in many ways. I think it's perhaps more comments, and I was maybe waiting for, I don't want to jump in front of Councillor Monroe really regarding the UIC situation, but yeah, I think the work's going on there has been fantastic. I've attended a few meetings which Councillor Monroe chairs, obviously down in UIC, so it's his perhaps his field really, but I really have been impressed by not only the council staff who are there, Gary, but also the RG MacLeod's men who have really, I thought, handled the meetings very well, the ones that I've been at. And it's just, I was down myself just the other day for a wee spin to have a look at down in Newig, and the work has just been, the improvement in it since the last time I was down there, the amount of work that's been done is just fantastic. So I hope that everybody accepts that this outage at the end of the year is completely necessary, and that we were going to have a really state-of-the-art ferry terminal when this is all finished. And so I suppose my only question regarding UIG is the process for the ferry terminal building, how that will be looked at, and how quickly you would expect that to go through the planning process. So that might be just a question for that there. Do you want me just to go through them all, Chairman, and or do you want to deal with each project one at a time?
No, I think we'll go, you make all your comments and questions.
Okay.
And then we'll go to Gary, and then we'll go down members. Okay. That way, yeah. Okay,
thank you. So on the link road, obviously we've been waiting for this since I think since the days of the old Highland Regional Council. So we're all excited in Portree about this link road and the advantages it's going to have. At least I think we're all excited anyway. So I just wondered just how, and I know it's had planning permission, but how are we progressing then with the land issues? Because I think that's what has been holding it up. And obviously, the longer this is delayed, the more expensive it's going to be. So I would just maybe like some more detailed information on the progress of the land acquirements, and also maybe a bit more detail on the design, because my understanding was, Chairman, that design had certainly been shown at one stage. I think it might have been to the community council, or it might have been in the last week, I'm not sure. But my understanding was that the design was going to concentrate on diverting the bulk of the traffic using link roads rather than say coming down the 855 from Staffin, that the impression for drivers would be that they go onto the link road, and the road going down, leading down into Boswell Terrace, for example, down the Staffin Road, would be very much a secondary route. So it'd be good to get some information on that layout. And also, Chairman, how your plans for the link road are linking in with the plans that Transport Scotland have for altering the junction at the high school. Because I think hopefully it's all been tied in together, and you guys have been consulted by Transport Scotland with their plans, which I believe are due to start sometime in September at the high school junction, which I would have thought would be completely should be completely linked in together, because we're changing the road outlay for the whole of the village, and ultimately for the north part of Skye. I think all I'm going to say about the harbour is really is to welcome any investment down at Portree Harbour. That's long overdue, and as you highlighted there, Gary, it's badly needed in some place. I suppose poor old Sir Thomas Telford would be turning in his grave if he thought the way his wall has been treated over the last few years. So I think any investment there, welcome, is good news, I think, for the community of Portree, especially, and the local fishermen, the local people businesses who are using the harbour. The cemetery again, well, what can I say? I could say something, but I'm not going to crack any wisecracks about this one. I think that it's obviously disappointing that we're still trying to progress this. It should have been done 4 or 5 years ago, when the initial little extension, we ended up just with a little extension rather than the whole thing being completed then. So it has cost the council a lot of money, this delay, and I hope that you can sort out the problems or the issues around there, and we can get work started in that very quickly, because the new extension is filling up far too rapidly for my liking at my age anyway. So I think that we need to get this thing done fairly quickly. So I would maybe welcome any further comments you have, either if not today, perhaps using maybe our next ward business meetings or whatever, or even email information. Any updates would be welcome. And all I can say about Raasay is fantastic that it's been considered in this particular new world of electric ferries, etc. And I know that the existing one, is the MV Hallig, has been very successful, and I certainly, it's been highlighted as very much a success, and we can see that Raasay is benefiting from that, from the infrastructure that was put in there the years ago. So I was quite surprised when you told us about that one, though, because I know that Councillor Monroe and myself sit on the various subcommittees of the McBrain's, and I think I'm on one that is affected by Raasay. I think it's Raasay and the Armadale Mallig ones. There's so many different ones, and I just hadn't heard anything about this before, and I just wondered, is this sort of really straight off the press that we haven't heard about it? And but I say I'll just welcome it all, John, and any other updates we can get about the Raasay initiative. If I can't get to the meeting, it would be very welcome. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Miller. I think you probably asked a lot of questions or made comments that other members have got. So, Gary, before you answer Drew, I'm going to go to Callum as well, because he's got his hands up.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Gary, for the report and for speaking to it. It's just good to see these projects progressing. In terms of UIG, I would endorse Councillor Miller's comments. The attendance and contribution from yourself and your other council officers has been excellent, as has RJ McLeod's. It's obvious the piling is complete, and the place looks much closer to completion now. The big crane cranes that are taking off site. I suppose it's a chance to commend the community for its forbearance for the period of the piling. There was some disturbance. Now it's passed and people are moving on. So I'd like to thank the community for that. Just similar to Councillor Miller, timescale for the completion of the terminal building. Portree Cemetery Extension, well, it's good to see this going on. I think we have to acknowledge too, some other communities are looking for cemetery developments and extensions. Skye, Boston and Vegan being two, so look forward to hearing about these at future area committee. And that's my comments. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll maybe just come on a couple of things, Gary, then you can pull it all together because I'm not seeing any other hands. In terms of UIG, yeah, I think it would be good to know when the terminal building will be completed. I was really interesting when I was looking at the work that you're doing on the old structures and how they're going to be sort of a composite part of the whole thing. Are there any concerns over the state of the old structures? I know you said there was some sort of additional scaffolding underneath to support the old structures. So it's really just a reassurance that the old structures are not going in any way compromise the additionality of the new structures. In terms of the link road, yeah, I think the issue we're all concerned about is getting a commitment that all lands have now been acquired to allow this project to finally move forward. The Portree Harbour, very clearly that's a high profile one, and as we discussed earlier, more and more cruise ships wanting to come to Portree, and there is a rumour that they're not coming because of the state of the harbour. So although we're deferring the capital spend for a year, I'm assuming that the plans are still ongoing in terms of planning to what needs done, when it's going to be done, and a time frame and a programme is in place. And finally, in terms of cemeteries, great to see the the Portree one, the extension, that needs to happen. But I think, as Councillor Monroe said, there are other cemeteries that we need to be looking at. My understanding is that Broadford extension is going ahead, and I think Forestry Commission have sold land or transferred land to the council, and maybe you can confirm if that's the case. So, a few questions and observations, Gary, so over to you.
Okay, I'll try my best. I've made some notes there. And in terms of the timing for the building at UIG, as I say, it's out to tender. Now this is a re-tender. It was all it went out for tender before, but the prices that came back were above what the Transport Scotland wanted to pay for the terminal building. So what we've done is look at the design again, rationalise some of the elements within that design, and we're now re-tendering. The tenders will be back in 6 weeks. The construction programme will be, the terminal will be complete by November next year. It'll be slightly later than the completion for the terminal, the harbour itself. The harbour works with RJ McLeod's will be completed by August, but the terminal building will be a few months later. So that was that. Just a quick word about piling and the forbearance of the community at UIG. I know that we've gone through some disruption. What I said was the marine piling is complete. We do actually have some piling to do on the building. The ground conditions there are such that that raft footing needs a piled foundation. So there is some piling on the land, but that shouldn't be to the same extent. It's much more limited than the marine piling that took place. What was the next one? That was land for the Portree Link Road. I actually just got an email the other day saying that the land is all but complete. The land issues are all but complete. The only thing that's outstanding at the moment is the decrofting of some portions of that land, but we are going through that process. So I think I got a bit of reassurance that the land issues have been resolved there. In terms of the routing through Portree, I think the link road will undoubtedly give an alternative for traffic, and you will get traffic diverting around the link road rather than going through the village. So that I think that's an inevitable consequence of providing that fixed link. I don't have a figure in terms of what that transference will be, but there will certainly be a redistribution of traffic once that link road's complete. The high school junction, I'm actually not cited on the trunk road works at the high school junction. I haven't been involved in that. I'm sure that Gordon MacDonald, the roads operation manager for the area, will be fully up to speed on that, but I don't have any information on that project. Okay.
T Harbour.
In terms of the cemeteries, I've got a note about other cemeteries within Skye. The project design unit have a full programme. We've got a prioritised programme of cemetery extensions throughout Highland, and we're working our way through that list. So no area will be forgotten in terms of those necessary cemetery extensions. Portree Harbour, yeah, the programme will depend on the allocation that we get from the new programme. At the moment, we've got zero spend for this year, so it was deferred at the last programme, so we don't have a project at the moment. Once we get that project confirmed for next year, we will recommence our work on programming those necessary repairs. Have I covered everything?
Okay, I'm seeing Councillor Miller wants to come back in, so you must have missed something.
Yep.
No, he hasn't missed anything. I just, my understanding from even a few years ago when I was last on the council as well is that the design for the link road was to create from where it joins the 855, from that point down into the village, which means going along Boswell Terrace, that area there. The idea of the design of the link road was to make that road more or less like a B road, so that it would be designed so that people would almost find it almost difficult to enter the village of Portree from the north, if you know what I mean, from the Staffin Road, because the biggest problem we have in Portree is the congestion along Boswell Terrace, especially. That is the huge problem there. So I just really like some reassurance as to that, as to the if that has changed or does it still remain that this road will be designed to encourage as many people as possible not to come down into Portree using the A855 after this new link road is completed. So obviously the signage will be important, as will be the layout to the new roundabout. And you know, I'll maybe ask Gordon the question later, but just sticking with the link road at the moment, I wasn't clear if the land has actually been agreed. It's quite disappointing if we're going to be held up for a huge amount of time by the land not being decrofted or waiting for it to be decrofted. And I just wondered, is it not possible, given you'll have the design and everything completed, that going out, putting it out to tender would, while you were waiting for the land to be decrofted, is that not possible? Because we all know what the Crofters Commission can be like, and they can take a ridiculous amount of time to come to a very simple decision, or at least a simple decision to maybe to people like me. So we've been waiting well over 20 years now for this link road, and I would hate to think that the further delays by the Crofters Commission in decrofting the land will hold it up too much longer, because, well, you know better than most of us, Gary, how the prices of materials are increasing on a daily basis almost. So we have the money aside from the housing people, their contribution to pay for this road at prices that were probably thought about maybe a couple of years ago, or certainly before it came to planning, where the word we were getting was, we really need to get this planning through so that we can get the money drawn down from the housing to pay for the road. So I don't know whether the new chief executive of the council or maybe Malcolm MacLeod from the planning can actually put pressure on the, maybe not pressure is not the right word, contact the Crofters Commission to try and expedite matters so that we can get on with this vital part of our infrastructure. Thank you, Chair.
Gary, any comment?
Yeah, just in terms of the decrofting, we haven't had any objection to the scheme for the planning from the Crofters Commission. So there shouldn't be any problem in terms of that. It is a procedural issue that we need to get the land decrofted before it can be adopted as a road. But I don't see any problem with carrying out that in parallel with the scheme. So I don't think that's an impediment to the scheme now.
So are we, sorry, Chairman, so we're saying then that the other land issue that you're needing to purchase land to the, oh, wait a minute, my directions, to the northeast of the land owned by the Free Church of Scotland, that land has been secured as well now then?
I am told by Alan Maguire that the land issues have been resolved.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, well, that's good news. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Gary.
Okay. Right, I'm not seeing any other hands up, Gary, so thank you very much for that update. I think, as Bruce said, exciting times, lots of projects happening and ongoing, and I think it's good for ourselves and for the public to get updates on how these projects are developing, and I'm sure that'll happen on an ongoing basis, and I'm sure you'll be in touch with us if there's anything important that we need to know with reference to any of these projects. So thank you once again for your contributions, and thank you also to all the contractors who are working in all of these projects, and hopefully we'll see them all come to fruition in our lifetimes.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Okay, members, we're moving on to agenda item 7, and I'd like to welcome Tom and Rosie from Raasay Community Development Company, who are here to talk to us about the Community Climate Action Plan. So, Rosie and Tom, over to you.
Great, hello. I'll just share our PowerPoint. Sorry, it's not working.
Alistair, are you able to help? Tom and Rosie got the rights to share their presentation.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, everyone's got rights to share the presentation. So
it might be a
okay. Try that.
Try this. It might be a privacy setting on my laptop. If not, Tom, do you want to try and share on yours?
If not, you can forward it to Alistair. I'm sure he can.
There we go.
Oh yes.
Yeah, you click that.
There we go. That's not it.
You've got us twice now. Oh, goodness sake. Heaven forbid. Heaven forbid.
Here,
there we are.
Here it is. Oh, did that work? Can you go into that? In a sec.
Yeah, no, it should be.
No, just got a blank screen, I'm afraid.
Sorry about this, guys.
Is it on? I just got a blank screen too. Oh no, right, do you want to go on to the...
Yeah.
You share the PowerPoint. Sorry.
Well, we're getting there now. Here we go.
Right, we're here. So thanks for the opportunity to share a little update from our project. So last May, Cabinet Secretary Mary Goujon announced that the Carbon Neutral Islands project was a Scottish Government programme for government commitment that supports 6 islands to become carbon neutral by 2040 ahead of the rest of Scotland. It aims to demonstrate the low carbon energy potential of Scotland's islands as hubs of innovation in renewable energy and climate change resilience, whilst positively impacting on island economies and population retention and growth. So the project also aims to create island-based jobs, stimulate local economies, and help islands adapt to the impacts of climate change in a just and inclusive way. The 6 islands will act as lighthouse communities for other Scottish islands and as a catalyst for net zero action across Scotland.
So the project aims to collaborate with local authorities, the government, and other ongoing initiatives to emulate existing good practices and share the learning that we discover. Well, the overarching aim is to reach net zero. We're hoping to do this in a way that gives community agency over its future. And this graphic here, you can sort of see the structure of the project. So the project has been designed to be a bottom-up approach, which I'm sure you've all heard of. It's got a network which supports this approach. At the core of the project is ourselves, which are 2 local development officers, both living and working here on Raasay. We represent the local anchor organisation and the island community, and we are sort of the link between the community and the rest of the project partners. The Scottish Government is, there's support from the Scottish Government, from the Islands team, Community Energy Scotland, and a few other external collaborators, including HIE and Sniffer.
So in November, we started work on carbon audits, which were published in February. These were presented to the community to help inform and stimulate discussion around the island's sustainability. These engagement sessions and the data collected formed the basis of the Community Climate Action Plan, which was published in May this year. The action plan sets the context of what we will be working on this year. Project delivery is supported by capital and resource funding from the Scottish Government, and from March 2024, an investment strategy from HIE. So what does this mean on Raasay? So the project, as we said, has 2 on-island development officers. We're employed through the local development trust. So that's myself and Tom, who have been in post since November 2022. We have carried out extensive local data gathering and community engagement and are now focused on project delivery. We currently have funding secured until March 2024, which includes 160,000 of capital grant funding. So Raasay has strong community ownership record. So we have community-owned shop, hydro scheme, hall, pontoon, wood fuel group, housing, and obviously Raasay House and the walled garden. So this project is built on the record on developing community support and cohesion. It's an opportunity for the community to take ownership of its future, ensuring it's sustainable whilst addressing the issues that matter to them. This project is also a chance to show how much of an impact community action can have when supported by local authorities and governments. This project has already highlighted the huge social and environmental impact that CNI could have on Raasay.
So when we started last November, it became very clear to us that there was very little usable data for Raasay, environmentally or socially alike. Often the data that was there lumped us in with North East Skye as we share a data zone with them. So this would portray an inaccurate picture. This led us to conduct our own household survey. And while we're at it, we used this opportunity to survey on a wide range of topics, realizing that this work is quite wide-reaching. The survey got responses from 87% of full-time households. So what did we find? We found out there's 179 people on Raasay, and this is a slow increase from the last census, which I think is very positive. On not such a positive note, we found out that half of our houses are empty, with these being holiday homes or just completely empty. 9% of our full-time residents live in caravans. Around half of the residents say they live with mould or damp, are rationing their purchase of heat, and are not warm enough in the winter. Our poor housing conditions led us to collaborate with Lacalish and Skye Housing Association to do an in-depth monitoring of temperature and humidity in 6 chosen houses. All but one of these houses failed to meet comfortable living standards, and in all of the houses, humidity was dangerously high. Some of the points from the other parts of the survey were on waste. 80% of people said they would recycle more if the on-island facilities existed. And there was a very strong desire for people to buy more local food. while producers felt like regulations were inhibiting them selling more local food. In transport, 60% of people said they rarely or never use public transport, and that's not including the ferry. 20% of people say there are journeys they cannot make due to lack of accessible or affordable transport, and 72% of people believe there isn't adequate public transport in the area. Along with the household survey, we worked with specialist consultants to do a carbon audit. The carbon audit is very much like how you'd work out your own carbon footprint, and it's just a measure of our total emissions. The magic number itself is 2,240 tonnes. That number is partially offset because we do have a forestry which acts as a sink. For some scale, if you burn 14 bags of coal, that's 1 tonne of CO2, or if you drive 3,400 miles in your car, that would also be 1 tonne of CO2. So sort of the key points that we found from the carbon audit were our housing and residential emissions are very high, up to 40% higher than the national average. The ferry and the distillery are quite big emitters, but these are out with our control. High car ownership and reliance among residents led to quite high transport emissions. And as I said, forestry is a sink, while peatlands may be an emitter, but this needs to be ground truthed, which is something we're working on this year. There were some caveats to this data collection. Obviously, it was done in a short time scale. So the land, the agriculture, and the waste side of things, they were done by a desk-based. So we are hoping this year to ground truth those audits to basically fact check them. We did do a blue carbon habitat assessment, and that's also very rudimentary, and the methodology for that still needs to be ironed out. And emissions from food were not calculated at all. So these are some things that, well, we will hope to build upon this year.
So after the community consultations, the community came up with 27 actions. The events were well attended. We had about 70 odd people over a couple of sessions. Both of the audits and the CCAP, the action plan, can be found on our website, which we can send a link through in the chat with. The top 5 actions that came out of this plan were insulate and retrofit houses, a feasibility into meeting Island's food needs locally, looking into new renewable projects, encouraging biodiversity and carbon sequestering habitats, and encourage improved public transport accessibility. So now on to the exciting stuff. So what we thought we'd tell you a little bit about what we're actually working on right now. So with such a stark housing conditions, it's no wonder that this was the highest priority for residents. So this has led us to work alongside Lahalsh and Skye Housing Association to purchase empty homes and have them retrofitted to high energy efficiency standard for the island's affordable housing stock. This project will hopefully forge the way for a community and housing association partnership, allowing the model to be rolled out across Skye and Lahalsh if it's successful. We're also looking at a collective retrofit of properties. We have around 40 houses initially signed up, and we're working with Home Energy Scotland and collaborating with the Healthy Homes project on Skye. We're looking at using Raasay as a possible case study for the larger project. At the moment, we are struggling to combine the finances for this project. So all the funding is very focused on one individual house. And when you're up here, it's very difficult to find accredited contractors to come and look at one house. So you need multiple houses, but the funding structures don't quite allow for that. So it will be interesting kind of trying to work this out over the next coming year. In transport, something that we're looking into is a mobility hub in collaboration with Sconser community. So we've had initial chats, and this would just involve improved transport links, delivery systems, and general accessibility. On the waste side of things, people would like to see an on-island recycling hub with a larger range of collection points. And with land, we're looking at peatland restoration and protecting areas of high biodiversity importance.
Yeah. So with our community hall, it's currently in a state of much needed repair, even though it's only about 10 years old or a bit more. In 2019, the heat pump broke, which has left the hall to rely on a very inefficient and expensive backup emergency heating system. There's large double doors allowing good views over the coolants, and over time these have sagged and warped due to poor design. And they're letting in wind and water. So with these sort of combined problems, it's put the community hall in a tricky position. So through our project, we are going to fund a repair of the heating system and a replacement of the doors. On top of this, we will also look to secure external funding to put solar PV panels on the roof and install battery storage, and possibly look into EV charging. Along with the community hall, we are also looking at how we could possibly decarbonise Raasay House. I'm assuming a lot of you know or are aware of Raasay House, so this is obviously a bit of a bigger job, and this is very much in the rudimentary stages of just investigating the possibility of it, but it is an aspiration. So what next for the project? Well, Raasay is a microcosm, and we think what we do and learn here can be replicated and shared with Skye and beyond Skye. There's a lot of learning and sharing that can be done, which is very unique to places like Raasay or Skye being remote Scottish islands. We would like support from all parties to try help deliver these. This year particularly, we've been given a short time scale. We've got this capital funding, which needs to be out the door by March. So it's imperative for us that we get everything moving. And we would ask, if we would like to see good communications on existing programs and what are the visions, the wider visions for Skye and Raasay, and how what we're trying to do can fit in with them, and collaboration on joint goals to help both islands. And that's the presentation for us, and thank you again for the opportunity and bearing with us, and happy for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. That was really, really interesting. If you want to maybe take down the presentation, and we can see if we've got questions or observations from members. Okay, so I'll start with Councillor Monroe.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rosie and Tom. Really enjoyed that presentation, and it's very much positive on one hand, but what it has done is shown many of the challenges which Raasay faces, and you're right, I think these challenges are faced across rural communities in Skye and the West Highlands, in fact the whole of the Highlands. I suppose the question I had was, you talked about £160,000 of capital funding for this year. It sounds like it has to go out the door by end of March. Is that going to be recurring over coming years, similar amounts? And I presume it doesn't preclude you seeking extra capital from other sources according to the projects you're undertaking. And just finally, I just think it's I'm really delighted to see this partnership with LSHA. I think that's going to, it's going to, hopefully that has an effect on housing stock across Skye and Raasay. And finally, it just seems to me, your final comments here, it sits in very well with Skye and Raasay future and our ambitions for our area, for our ward. And I think it just shows that we can learn from each other. And I think it'd be interesting to get Skye and Raasay future a higher profile in general, and get it actually making progress for our communities, and indeed in partnership with our communities. So thanks, Chair. Thank you both.
Okay, Rudy.
Thank you, John, and thanks for the presentation. It was very informative. Actually, it was a lot of good work's been put into this, clearly. And I think the point that I was going to make was one that was made by Callum to do with the work on housing. I think that is a big issue. The statistics that were presented there really shows how big a challenge that energy efficient housing is towards meeting these net zero goals. I think this is something that we've seen across the board, and hopefully this will lay the groundwork for for projects to be undertaken elsewhere, because you know it is an area where we know that there is a lot of good work to be done, and I think this has really sort of paved the way to hopefully seeing this rolled out a bit wider across the ward and indeed the Highland Council area. But with that, thank you again for the presentation.
Okay, Drew.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you both as well for the presentation. Yeah, hey, it's interesting to see all the things that are actually going on Raasay. I just on the housing issue. I mean, you had a meeting obviously there not that long ago with the LSHA and the council as well. Disappointing in some ways to hear the number of houses that are lying empty. It's a while, as well as probably a year since I've been over in Raasay. And it was walking along in Inverarage. It was quite depressing almost to see the number of properties that are lying empty. And I suppose there's much you can do about people who have the houses and are not willing to have them used all the year round, given the fact that you mentioned so many people living in caravans. So I just wondered basically how successful that meeting was, the joint meeting you had with the council and the LSHA. And also, I mean, your land ownership in Raasay, I mean, do the government own it all, or do the community own parts of the island? I suppose just it'd be interesting to see the split there. Having read some of the history of Raasay, having one landlord was never a good success for Raasay over the centuries. In fact, it caused probably the population to drop as low as it did. And just the other thing as well, we had a very brief, I don't know if you were with us at the time, the news about potential of a new all-electric ferry, which obviously would affect your the survey you did on relating to the transport, because that's obviously going to be a lot more environmentally friendly if and when it happens. So I would just wonder maybe if you want to make a comment on that, because there's a public meeting in when was it, end of this month or towards the end of this month? So I just maybe like your thoughts on what you would like to see or what you would like to hear from that meeting as well. But yeah, good work, and you know, it's I hope that when as you progress this, that as you mentioned yourselves, it might be able to expand out to places like Skye, which even though we've got the bridge, is still an island, and it would be nice to see what we can learn from you guys there, that we can then extend into Skye, because you know it's obviously a bigger population, but so maybe some of what we can learn from you would have a greater impact on the overall sort of idea of getting our carbon footprint lowered. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, Rosie, I've got a couple of comments to make, but I'll let you answer I'll make comment on the ones you've heard already from the other three members, if you want.
Yeah, so unfortunately, just with the funding, we're at the mercy of the Scottish Government's yearly funding rounds. So we probably won't find out our next year's funding until
next year.
Next year.
Yeah. But that is something that we're looking at. How can we make ourselves a bit more resilient there, and like
less reliant on government year-round funding.
And yeah, and we do secure like you were mentioning, other sources of funding. So the Hall is a good example. We're looking with Local Energy Scotland. So we hope that what we will bring to Raasay will be much bigger than 160k. It'll be many hundreds of thousands by the time we match fund or are able to secure other funding. And that 160k, we're sort of thinking will hopefully act as leverage to secure that other funding.
Yeah. So yeah, work on the housing front. We're really hopeful that this is a successful project and it can kind of pave the way for other communities to do the same, especially if you're in a situation where housing's a priority and maybe the community's got some wind farm money or something that they would like to put into housing, but it's maybe not enough to build 5 houses. If they could partner with Skye and Raasay Housing Association and bring some empty homes back into the mix, it would be amazing. The meeting, so in theory, I think both Scottish Government and Highland Council have agreed that the project can go ahead as long as it falls under a certain cost. We're not sure what that is. No one has communicated that yet, but we're trying to figure that out. I think you guys will know, but I think building costs around these parts at the moment are astronomically high. So we just have to wait for the Housing Association to do an initial assessment before we can figure out if we can go ahead or not.
And I mean, you were mentioning about just all these empty houses, and we're sort of hoping if this were to work, then we can maybe start approaching owners directly. And I mean, a lot will say no, but you might get a few that say yes and sort of say, we've got this model set up that works where the community along with the housing association are procuring houses. And it is sad, like you said. I mean, like, you've got the fact that people don't have their homes, and then they've also got lots of people who don't have neighbours because there's empty houses on either side of them, and it's something that you don't think about until you're there, and then it's brought up, and it does have an effect. Yeah, and on the land ownership, the vast majority is yes, government owned, and then obviously forestry, and then sort of community, and then private crofts would be roughly the makeup. So we should have the potential to do things, given the fact that we are government owned, and the Forestry Commission are quite forthcoming and working with us, and there is quite a bit of community owned land. So yeah, and the ferry.
Yeah, I suppose one last comment on the ferry. One thing that we would really love, and we've reached out to Calmac and CMAL about this, but we haven't had a reply yet, is if we are getting this new all-electric ferry, is we would love the chance, while this is in planning, to be able to supply the ferry with community renewables. So that would generate an income for us as a community. It would give the ferry cheaper electricity, and just generally be an all-around greater solution. Not sure how we start proceeding with that yet, but that's the general consensus with us at the moment on this new electric.
And that'd be something that we would want to chat about at that meeting on the 31st. And I mean, like what you were saying broader about the learning here, you know, I think that's the idea. We're a smaller place, and we can make the mistakes sort of and find out what works and what doesn't. And then once we've got that whittled down a bit, then you can share and say, like, well, this is what we found worked for us, and what doesn't. Yeah, if you've got another question there, Callum.
Okay, right. No. I mean, I think what's really encouraging is the fact that you've had the community consultation, you've done your audits, and you've got a plan in place. It's just frustrating, I'm sure, that in terms of your capital grant funding, you mentioned there the difficulty getting contractors, but also the funding structures that that are in place, and that's really disappointing, because time and time again we're seeing funding structures that don't really take account of rural areas. And that's I mean, Highland is totally a rural authority, and we've got so much of Scotland that is rural. So it's really, really important that at all levels we push that anything that happens in terms of creating funding structures does take account of local areas and rural areas in particular. Slightly concerned about the community hall, because as you say, it's probably the newest community hall in the Skye and Raasay. And I can remember being in it a few times, so it must be very frustrating that there are these issues. And given I know the sense of community that prevails in Raasay, that has to be a priority, I think, to get your community centre sorted and up and running. And it might be that we as members, that might be something in terms of supporting that. It might be something that we might be able to help you with. So I'm sure Willie will know it, and Alistair will know if there's any funding that we can help you with round about there. Callum?
Thanks, Chair, for letting me back in. I forgot to comment about the housing aspect. I mean, couldn't be more stark. I mean, and perhaps optimistic. I mean, 50% empty homes. If you filled these homes, you could you would double the population of Raasay. You could have nearly 400 people in Raasay. That could be medium term, because these are existing homes. You're not talking about building. You're not talking about huge building out of the ground, brand new house costs, expensive it will be. So just that struck me as we could see an island in medium term with almost doubling its population, which is fantastic. Thanks, Chair.
Can I maybe ask, you mentioned 50% uninhabited. What does that actually mean in figures? Is that 20 houses, 30 houses, 40 houses? Because I think that maybe makes a bigger impact when people think about it.
We have 99 no.
So it was the same a total number of houses on Raasay is the same as the population. It's 189. So about 90. Yeah, well, half of that are the uninhabited. Now, as a point to that, some of those, you know, people come up for a couple of weeks, but that is with a criteria where people that aren't here for longer than the summer, basically, or for a couple of weeks. Yeah, and on the whole, I mean, I think it is very imperative, and they're stuck in between a rock and a hard place because they're crippled by the bills, so they can't but rally the money to fix. And you know, they're getting quotes and, like, you know, just to replace these doors, and you're like, well, it's just some doors. You're talking 36,000 or so, you know, to replace. Yeah, it's expensive. Yeah, so any support would be much welcomed if there is any available. Yeah.
Okay. Well, can I thank you both once again for coming along to the committee. I mean, I'm sure we will have you back, because I think it's important that we get updates on how things are developing. Hopefully you do get your funding, so there is a greater degree of sustainability in your ambitions. And I think we're all impressed by the work that you're doing. And dare I be ageist and say it's great to see young people grasping the nettle and running with things in our community. So congratulations on what you've achieved, and we'll have you back, I'm sure, with more good news in the future.
Great, thanks very much.
Thanks for having us, guys. All the best.
Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Okay, members, moving on to item agenda 8, a Community Regeneration Fund project report. And we've got Marianne Gray with us, I think. Marianne's going to give us... Good morning, Marianne. How are you?
Good morning, I'm fine, thank you very much. Hope you're all well too.
Yep. So we're just going to hand over to you, Marianne.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me today to do hopefully a quick presentation on projects funded via the Community Regeneration Fund over the last few years on Skye and Raasay. I have prepared a presentation, so I will attempt to share that with you just now. Hopefully, if it will come up. Okay, hopefully you'll be able to see that in a second. Can you all see that okay? That
was more straightforward than the last time. Yeah, fantastic.
I've practiced many times. So I just thought I would start with a few simple reminders, I guess, of what is actually Community Regeneration Fund and how it all started. So as you know, or I should say once upon a time, we had access to European funding via what was called the LEADER programme. So now that we are in a post-Brexit situation, I guess, the team that dealt with the LEADER funding moved on to become the Community Regeneration Funding team. So we refer to that as the CRF team because it's a big mouthful. And the team then started administering a new fund called the Highland Coastal Communities Fund, referred to as HCCF. So HCCF is derived from the net revenues of the Crown Estate's marine assets in Scotland. HCCF round 1 opened in 2020 with over £3 million devolved to local area committees with a defined coastline to support community projects. Over the last couple of years, and due to internal changes within the Highland Council, the CRF team was also tasked with administering an additional 3 funds on top of the Coastal Communities Fund. And that is the Place-Based Investment Programme, or PBIP, the Community-Led Local Development Fund, CLLD, and also elements of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So all these funds essentially are aimed at economic regeneration of our communities. And although, of course, you know, the money is more than welcome and needed in our communities, it also meant the funding landscape was obviously quite cluttered. And from an applicant's point of view, we had queries around, you know, what fund will my project be eligible for? Which one should I apply to? Where are the deadlines for each fund? And can I apply to more than one fund to build my funding package? From applicants, from our point of view within the team, we also had to look at internal processes for dealing with 4 different funds, which potentially could mean 4 different sets of application forms, 4 different sets of claim forms, monitoring forms, and so on. So it became quite clear when we looked at everything that the best way to administer the 4 funds and to maximise the impact on the communities would be to gather them under this one umbrella term of community regeneration funding. And for our applicants, it means one expression of interest form, one application form, one set of processes, and one point of contact within the team, which makes a difference. So when a project is successful in securing funding, we basically look at it in the background, assess their funding needs, and build the funding package against, for what they need and they're trying to achieve. So our aim was very much to ease the burden on the project applicants, meaning that they could focus on delivering the projects rather than actually do tons of paperwork. So this was run as a pilot in over 2022-2023. And so far it has been very successful and well received. There are challenges, I think, within the team to obviously try and think outside the box and try and simplify our systems without relenting, I suppose, on any of the control that we need to have when we award public funding. So as I mentioned earlier, the CRF team over 2019-2021 administered only the one fund, and that was the Highland Coastal Communities Fund, the round one of HTCF. So today I thought I would give you some updates on projects that members have funded via this first round of HTCF, as I think it is important that you can see the benefits of the funding to the communities. I can't report on all the projects as part of this presentation. I would be there all day, I think, at this stage. But I have selected a few that I hope can give you a bit of a snapshot of what's been achieved so far on Skye and Raasay. So in total, HCCF round 1, members on Skye and Raasay awarded £623,184 to 19 different projects across the island. Now, unfortunately, the HCCF round 1 was a bit, I guess it was beset with many issues. They were awarded amidst the COVID-19 outbreak, which caused a lot of disruptions and delays in projects getting started. Additionally, due to well-known international and national events, we also have to deal with a serious cost of living crisis, which has meant high and unexpected rises in project costs across the whole Highland region. And a lot of the projects have also been struggling with issues such as shortage of contractors, shortage of building materials, and on Skye and Raasay, you've also got, I suppose, additional issues with a shortage of staff and housing, which can cause further delays in project progress. So all in all, from round 1 of HCCF on Skye and Raasay, from the 19 projects that were awarded funding, 9 are now fully complete, 8 are still in progress, but progressing well, and 2 are not quite yet started for various reasons. So just a quick note before I start reporting on the actual projects, I just want to mention our monitoring processes. So within the team, we have systems in place to keep in touch with our applicants, check that the projects are being delivered, and ensure we support them as much as possible. The monitoring processes that were put in place for HCCF round 1, we had to review to obviously take into account the additional 3 funds that we've added under this umbrella approach of CRF. And we have now created a framework, I suppose, a monitoring framework, which allows us to gather information on project impact and still meet all the monitoring and reporting requirements from each individual fund set by the Scottish and UK governments. So the framework centres around 4 themes of people, place, economy and environment. And under all the themes, we have 5 strategic objectives: increasing community resilience, tackling poverty and addressing causes of rural depopulation, helping economic recovery and sustaining growth, and tackling the climate emergency and working towards net zero. So as part of the application process to CRF, we ask that all our projects meet at least one of the 5 strategic objectives. The monitoring framework is still fairly new to us and ever evolving and still a work in progress. And we hope in the future to be able to align it with the area-based place plans like you have on Skye, I suppose, with the SARF. So project applicants, once they've been awarded funding, must submit to us regular progress reports, even the projects that haven't been able to start. We also require applicants to complete an end of project report once their project have been fully delivered. And the information I'm about to share with you on some of the projects is the information that was captured via these progress reports. So the first project we're looking at today is a project titled Climavore Builds. It was led by Climavore, a community interest company based on Skye, which aims to make Skye an international hub for alternative and regenerative coastal food systems. The project itself was built upon, I think, previous activities run by Climavore in Skye and Raasay, and it focused on progressing the development of a new material which could be used in the construction industry, generated out of food waste. The new construction material offers an alternative to cement, which is currently obviously used in the construction industry and is a main contributor to CO2 pollution. So this project has been fully delivered. It has met the strategic objective number 5, so the tackling the climate emergency and working towards net zero. The HCCF award helped fund the project outputs, which included 4 workshops on innovative ways to use shells and seaweeds as construction materials, a feasibility study to replicate the model to other coastal communities in Scotland, and a building apprenticeship. The applicant is now working to grow this model into a successful community-owned circular economy business across Skye. HCCF 146, that was the signal expansion project led by Radio Skye, and they were awarded just over £18,000. Again, the project has been fully delivered and met the strategic objective number 1, increasing community resilience. It delivered 2 new antennas in Slate and Staffin, bringing a new radio signal to these areas, which previously had little, if no, access to the analog signal of the radio station. The installation of the antennas has led to new connections with the Staffin and Slate communities and increased the listeners' numbers in general across the island. It has also improved the community's confidence in the station, and it has allowed Radio Skye to work with local and national partners and develop promotional and sponsorship opportunities. An increased engagement with students at the Gaelic College has also helped to develop and create Gaelic content for the radio. So thanks to the HCCF funding, the station has increased its training programs, and throughout the duration of the project has fully trained 19 new presenters and upskilled 5. 6 of the new trainees are under the age of 18, with a youth programme growing from strength to strength and continued connection with Skye Youth Development and Portree Youth Club. 5 of the new presenters went on to win the UK Community Radio Awards, and 1 of the youth presenters was shortlisted for a Community Radio Award and won a Young Audio Award for Best Speech Show, supported by the BBC Young Reporter for young person aged 12 to 60. So both awards were from UK-wide competitions, so a great achievement. Radio Skye is now looking to develop even further with a new full-time appointment of a cultural journalist, and they have added 4 more local news bulletins to their daily schedule, and that covers news from the entire Skye and Loch Alsh area. HCCF 156, I think, is one that will be you'll be familiar with. So this was a project led by the Portree and Braes Community Trust, titled Reimagining Kamnar Square, and it was awarded just over £31,000 of HCCF. It is now fully delivered. The project itself was born, I think, in 2009, when it was identified that the community centre and the wider Kamnar Square area were suffering from a general lack of maintenance and investment. Following a consultation exercise, Portree and Breeze Community Trust were advised to undertake feasibility work to assess the opportunities and the potential liabilities in consolidating all the interests in land into community ownership, and therefore maximising the potential of the area for the benefit of the community. So the HCCF award has allowed for this work to be done. Portree and Breeze Community Trust have been able to provide an up-to-date options appraisal and master plan, assess the economic, cultural, environmental and social needs of the current and growing community of Portree and Breeze, and propose how the long-term redevelopment of the area and the building assets in the Kamnar Square area under community ownership could meet all those needs and create a financially sustainable community hub for sports and recreation. The HCCF funding has also supported Portree and Breeze Community Trust to carry out an assessment of ownership in the area and provided clarity on all the relevant titles. So since this work has been completed, Portree and Breeze Community Trust have been progressing applications to transfer ownership of the land to the community. I believe members may have already had the opportunity to review the feasibility study and master plan, but if you haven't, please let me know and I can email you a copy of the documents. HCCF 137, so that is a project titled KC Plus, led by Highland Connections, and the project was awarded just over £64,000 of HCCF. So I wanted to talk to you about this project in particular. It is one of the HCCF Round 1 projects that has been beset by delays and issues that were out of the applicant's control. Highland Connection as an organisation provides daycare service for adults with learning disabilities living in South Skye and Raasay, and they run their services largely from the old school in Highland. So a service review in 2017 identified the need for more space to accommodate the increasing number of service users, and also to address the greater needs of the individual service users as they grow older. So an application was submitted to HCCF and was successful, and that was to build a new facility and provide a solution to meet the needs. So the project, as I said, is not quite yet completed, but it is now progressing well. It has had various delays in securing match funding, contractor capacity due to mostly COVID-19 related issues, and shortage of materials. Hopefully, you will be able to see the fully delivered building by the end of autumn this year. HCCF 107. So that was a project led by the Broadford and Strath Community Company, and it was awarded just over £34,000. So this project is particularly interesting to report on, as the HCCF award helped fund core costs for a community organisation to deliver on a variety of projects in the area. So it's one of these awards for which I probably would need to do a completely separate presentation to ensure I report on all the impacts achieved with the funding. However, for the purpose of this presentation, I've solely highlighted a few of the activities and outputs that have been delivered and supported by the community coordinator, thanks to the HCCF grant over a 2-year period. So you can see it on your screen just now. I have also included a quote from the applicant, which I think highlights the impact of HCCF on the community. So you can see from the quote that the applicant states the £34,000 invested into this project has allowed the organisation to generate a further £480,000 for development in the community, which I think is quite obviously a powerful message. I have produced a separate slide on a particular project led by the Broadford and Strath Community Coordinator, which I think you will all be familiar with as well, and that is the Elgol toilets. So HCCF Round 1 funded £34,500 towards this project, and the CRF pilot programme recently awarded £11,900 to cover a shortfall in funding due to cost rises. So the toilets are now complete and are in use, and I think have been a very welcome addition to the area, both by tourists and locals. Broadford and Strath Community Company are now looking to complete the project with the addition of a path to safely link the toilets to the village and take pedestrians away from the road. So hopefully this one will be coming to completion as well at the end of autumn 2023. So as I said earlier, these were only a few of the projects that were funded through HCCF Round 1. But I do hope it's given you a bit of a snapshot of what is currently ongoing on Skye and Raasay. Last year was our pilot year with the Community Regeneration Fund umbrella term, and it included round 2 of HCCF, the annual allocation for the place-based investment programme, and the community-led local development funds. So in total on Skye and Raasay from the area funds, members awarded £440,000 of funding to 15 different projects in January 2023. I'm happy to report that as of today, 10 projects are in progress, 2 are nearly completed and 3 are not yet started. But we should be in a position to report on the impact of this CRF pilot year in the next financial year. So presentations like this one today, I hope will give members some reassurance that the funds they have awarded have been put to good use and have had really positive impacts on the island communities. The scale and quality of projects we're seeing on coming forward on Skye and Raasay is really fantastic. It is important that we keep measuring the impact of the funding across the whole of the Highland communities. And for this reason, we're looking at actually improving our monitoring and evaluation processes and project impact reporting. I'll not talk for too long on this, but simply just let members know that for a few years, we've had limited capacity within the team to actually produce quantifiable and measurable impact of the funding. But we are now in a position to start work on this a bit more. And we are looking at possibly a form of software or a virtual platform, which will allow us to record the project outputs. And the platform will then calculate a return on investment based on the social value impact of each project. So we're quite excited about this, because it should mean in the future we are able to clearly demonstrate the value of the funding to members, but also to the communities in I suppose, a quantified and a measured way, and more importantly, in a language that is actually easy to understand. It will also allow us to evidence the need and the impact of the community regeneration funding devolved to the Scottish Highlands from the Scottish and the UK government. So that brings me nicely to my last slide, and it is about the reopening of CRF. So following the success of the pilot year, we have decided to open up the funds again under this umbrella term of community regeneration funding. On Skye and Raasay for this upcoming round, we are looking at about £420,000 of available funding. We are aiming to open for expression of interest stage week commencing 28th of August, and we will be inviting projects that support economic regeneration to come forward for spend between March 24 and March 25. More specifically, we would like to see projects that support the aims of the Skye and Raasay future plan, that are deliverable within the time frame and can evidence local support. Applications are welcomed from constituted community groups, charities, public sector bodies, community ownership initiatives, and minimum and maximum grant request amount we're looking at £5,000 and £100,000 respectively. Final funding decisions for this next round of funding will be in January or February area committee once we've got the date set in the calendar. So this concludes my presentation to you today, members. I hope you have found it interesting and informative. I am happy to answer any queries you might have about the funds or the projects we discussed.
Okay, Marianne, thank you very much indeed. I think that was a really useful presentation, and I think it also shows the very positive work that is happening right across Skye and Raasay, and I think that's the important thing. We've got projects happening right across both islands, which is really encouraging. And the Community Regeneration Fund absolutely has made a difference in so many communities and for so many groups. And before I hand over to Councillor Stewart, can I thank you and your team, because absolutely I think the partnership working we've had with you and Fiona in particular has been spot on. It's probably some of the best partnership working I've had in my term as a councillor, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Rudy.
Thank you, Chair. No, thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting, and I think it is always good to see that we are achieving the sort of desired outcomes of these funds, and they're being spent well in the community, really to everybody's benefit. But something that your presentation didn't really touch on was I think it was at the start. It was, you said there was 2 projects that had not yet begun. I would just like to find out a wee bit more about those, and hopefully in a way get some reassurances that, you know, that although they've not yet started, you know, the organisations are still like engaging with the process, you know, and that hopefully at some point that we will be able to see outcomes delivered from them as well. So it'd be good just to a bit more just about the general what the project aims were, the sort of values of the project, and if we have had continued engagement with the applicants since the award of funding. That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Monroe.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Marianne. And just to echo the Chair's remarks, it's been good to work with you, and it shows how local decision making can be done to its best and supported by you. So it really is appreciated. Just for your information, Marianne, I made a transparency statement at the start so people know my involvement with this or engagement with the fund a couple of years ago. I just think it's so good that the public in our area are going to see this. So the presentation was excellent. I thought the visuals earlier on, I think the second or third slide was fantastic, showing, you know, some of the issues which groups were facing in terms of rising construction costs and delays in terms of pandemic and such like. So really good. The Broadford and Strath Community Company coordinator, that's amazing. And like you say, there was so much in that. You mentioned there about the, you know, that levered in something like almost £500,000. It might have been good on one or two others just to show what match funding came as a result of our funding. But it's probably not possible on them all, but certainly that was a striking example of what can be achieved locally. And I just liked the idea of monitoring and looking at applications in terms of SARF. I think that's very important. I think that's something we're going to, you know, SARF is for Skye and Raasay and for our communities. So really good. Thank you very much.
Okay, and before we go back to Marianne, Drew.
Yeah, just reiterate what both all of you have said there. I think it was a really a really interesting presentation, and people who are maybe not as aware as perhaps we were of what's going on in Skye will be, I would pleasantly surprised, if not astonished, at the amount of projects that are going ahead and that have been successful. As somebody who experienced many years ago, being part of the local leader board. Oh man, it was difficult. And that's all I could possibly comment, given that this is recorded. I think that the way things are being handled now by a team of people who know the ins and outs of every single award and the processes is what a huge advantage it is for every area, but Skye and Raasay in particular, because I think that the old system that leader were using of getting people going along to sit at the committee and just getting updates and then making decisions. I'm glad to see that progress has been made, and this is a much more efficient and a much more beneficial, in my opinion anyway, a much more beneficial way of dealing with things. And it takes away, I think in some ways, it takes away a bit of the local aspect when people can see it and look at things objectively rather than maybe being dragged into local issues. And though the local members, elected members, are making perhaps the final decisions, it's based on objective advice coming from officials. So I think it's been a huge improvement. And to be honest, I'm just looking forward to seeing some of the applications that are coming in, that will be coming in over the next 6 months or so, because I think it's exciting that we can see money being invested in projects which are going to benefit the whole community, the whole community from young to old. And I have to say, the Broadford and Strath, what you showed there on that particular slide is just quite amazing what they're doing down there. And yeah, let's just congratulate them on accessing all that extra funding because of a simple £34,000 being granted to them. It's just incredible. Having used the new facilities at Broadford myself, I'm trying to think very often quickly how do you, it's like day and night, shall we say. The new public toilets in Broadford, I haven't gone to the elder ones yet, but the Broadford ones are just fantastic. And if you compare them to what's across the road from the old Highland Council ones, I think we really need to encourage communities to invest in similar toilet facilities throughout Skye and Raasay, because it's just absolutely fantastic. It's almost a pleasure to visit them nowadays. So thank you, Marianne. That was just superb.
Okay, right, Marianne. I think you've got lots of plaudits there, and I think it was just the one question from Councillor Stewart about the two projects that haven't yet started. But I think you have kind of reassured us that you are monitoring and engaging. But do you want to confirm that for Councillor Stewart?
Yes, so the two projects that haven't yet been able to start on from HCCF round one, we are very much monitoring their progress. One of them has come forward with a shortfall in funding, so they obviously, again, experiences huge cost rises. So they are in the process. That one is definitely progressing. We've got another project also not yet started, but again, looking at match funding from various external funders, which I think is not quite in a position to start at the moment, but hopefully will be in the next 6 months or so. So I can maybe report on that in the next area business meeting, or when I've got a bit more information on a start date anyway for both of them. And I just want to thank members as well for their support in presenting all the applications for the last round of CRF. And Fiona and I have found it really useful to have this conversation with members, because you've obviously got the local knowledge, so it's been extremely useful for us. So thank you very much.
Okay, once again, Marianne, thank you very much for that presentation. And as I've said, your ongoing partnership working with communities and with members, and long may it continue. And I'm sure if we can advocate additional resource to help you in what you're doing, that's something we'll do, because clearly the work that you are doing with us and with communities is bearing great success. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, members.
Okay, members, moving on to agenda item number 9, Isle of Skye and Raasay Winter Maintenance Plan. And I'm delighted to welcome Gordon MacDonald, our area roads manager. So over to you, Gordon.
Morning, Chair. Good morning, members. A winter service plan for 23-24. Basically, the council's winter service policy is in place to ensure a consistent level of service between areas, and also take into account the restrictions of EU and domestic driving hours. And the policy obviously can't ensure that roads are free of ice at all times, but it states that the timings that we will be out on the route network. The service policy sets out the hierarchies of treatment. If basically the council's network is split into primary routes, secondary routes, and other routes. Primary routes are treated first, thereafter secondary routes and other routes being treated as resources permit. Other routes, by definition, are adopted roads which are neither primary nor secondary. The route maps are contained in Appendix 1 of the report and identify all the primary and secondary routes. The forecasting and decision-making process, basically the duty officer receives a forecast at noon that covers the following 36 hours. Forecast will be used to determine that evening's pre-treatment and or morning action, and the forecast is updated at 5 o'clock in the afternoon usually. Were there to be a change overnight, the duty officer may receive a call after 5 o'clock in the morning, updating him on whether conditions have significantly deteriorated from what was intended, or they have significantly improved. Duty officers are rotated 24/7 and are all trained and qualified to undertake that role. Standby systems in place to ensure there are sufficient operatives to cover weekend work and holiday periods and things like that. In terms of vehicles and plant, we have 4 dedicated vehicles and 3 lorries with demountable gritters. For footpaths, we have 2 footpath tractors, one based in Portree and the other based in Broadford. Winter operations tend to start at 6 o'clock in the morning and will continue till 9 o'clock at night on primary routes and 6 o'clock at night on all other routes. Provision of grit bins and salt bins. In areas that have been found to be difficult, steep gradients, or that are not regularly gritted, bins can be placed and are placed before winter, as well as salt piles that would be deposited at the side of the road, and throughout the winter they will be filled or replenished as and when resources dictate or allow. In periods of exceptional weather, I think there was 3 periods last winter where there was snow on the ground for about a week. That stretches our resources quite significantly, in that gritters were often found on their routes, having to treat in both directions and not being able to get from primary to secondary. So there can be delays in getting round and through the service. In terms of other routes, the council operates a community self-help scheme or winter resilience scheme. This scheme invites community groups to identify an area that they would wish to undertake some additional winter or pavement gritting. There's an application form available on the council's website for any local communities that wish to take up that option. And guidance is available on both the Council's website and the Scottish Government's website on people remaining safe during the winter. I don't think I have anything else to say and would wish to invite questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. I think the additional maps that are contained in the report will be of great benefit to members of the public, and I think we need to encourage them to look at the Highland Council website to see what the primary and the secondary routes are, because I think maybe there is a lack of understanding that people think that maybe gritters can be everywhere at every time, and we've only got a limited resource, and there is a priority schedule. And I suppose last year, when we had an unusually cold spell with lots of snow and ice, and we know the damage it had to our roads, that was an unusual situation, and we can understand why community members were frustrated. But hopefully this additional information will make it clear what the routes are and the priority. And I really think that the fact that we're offering a community resilience scheme, I know there are a lot of people do it themselves, and I'm sure members here do as well. So having that official scheme might again be helpful for our local community. So thanks for sharing that. I'll go to Councillor Monroe.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Gordon. I think you've gone through the main points of your report, so thank you for it. I think it's, as the Chair says, we have a winter service plan for our area. I think it's important that people are made aware of it and aware of the parameters in which we can deliver that. I think there's also maybe people make unhelpful comparisons of what Bear can do in a trunk road. I think their situation is completely different to ours. That's my understanding, and the investment they have to keep the trunk road opening. I think another thing is people need to be aware that we're making local decisions on our gritting. I had a comment there in February, March saying, "Oh, there's Inverness." I think that, to be honest, the morning had gone off the frost and a gritter was out, and the comment was, "Oh, there's Inverness ruling Skye again." And I said, well, actually, we are making local decisions, and weather can change very quickly. Gordon, I had a couple of I looked at the route maps, and again, they are clear. Route 10, and it touches on the primary and secondary route around the A855. Now, I know Ballinacroch gets a secondary route status. I was just wondering about Glenconnan, Gordon, across the other side. Would that be similar topography there? The other point, Gordon, is maybe in the Staffin side, we have the Marishadder Road, which goes past the primary school up to the new health centre. Even if that quarter mile or 400 yards could be seen as a secondary route, that might be a good use of resource. I think too, Gordon, we obviously had difficulties with our plant last year. I think our communities need reassurance that, our vehicles are hopefully going to be available when required. And of course, there are challenges with that. I think that's my questions and observations now. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Gordon.
Okay, Councillor Miller.
Yeah, thanks very much, Gordon. It's always a bit of a contentious issue, isn't it? The definitions of your gradings for the treatment. But what's quite stark, I think, is perhaps the lack of resource that we have. Your four gritters and 2 footpath tractors to cover the sort of the areas, the town of Portree, which it's become a town nowadays, and with lots more pavements than you've ever had before to look after, and Broadford, of course, as well, with the housing, new housing in Broadford, and of course Kilachan as well. So there seems to be quite a stark lack of resource there for you to be able to operate with. So I think it will be our job to perhaps to try and on your behalf, or behalf of your workforce, to try and maybe access some more resource for you to be able to utilise. But of course, again, I'm sure, I think you may have mentioned at a previous World Business meeting, the problem of retaining a workforce as well is something I suppose you have to face in the coming. But can I just maybe welcome the addition of some of these bins that you've salt bins that you've been putting out, not only in in some of the more rural areas, but also in certainly here in Portree. Certainly very grateful for one that was located just on Blavin Road there, near where I stay, because it's certainly been a useful thing to have last winter, and I'm sure if it's anything like last winter, if this winter's anything similar to that, it's going to be very well utilised, because as you're well aware, some of our roads in the middle of Portree are not adopted, and therefore it's up to the communities perhaps to help themselves. So I welcome your piece of the report where it highlights the fact that there is help available for community help, self-help, and I hope that excuse me, we maybe need to try and advertise that a bit more, to maybe encourage some communities. I take it community self-help, you would be looking at perhaps individual streets or a couple of streets, householders there who are fit and active, that maybe they could volunteer to assist. So I think one of the issues facing us last winter was the problems, because I know you had Councillor Monroe mentioned the fact that some of your machinery was out of action for a while last winter. Some of the pavements and certainly in the built-up areas were left untreated for a considerable time, though it was a severe winter. Maybe you could clarify for us as well the pavements running through Broadford and Portree that are part of Anduig, part of the Trunk Road network. I mean, how do these pavements, do they get treated by, or who do they get treated by, I should maybe is the easiest question to ask. But, I think that you're doing the best you can, and I think we maybe as members, we need to try and use social media and use our local media, Radio Skye and the Free Press to maybe try and explain to the general public the issues that you and your service are having to face over the winters. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, back to you, Gordon.
Councillor Monroe, Route 10. I think the issue at Chiada may relate to historic school numbers. I'll need to get back to you to confirm that, but I think that's why it seems to be the odd one out. Marishada, you've clearly identified a mistake in the mapping. There appears to be an omission, and yes, the road between the junction as far as the school and the medical centre should be getting treated as a secondary route. That will get changed on the maps, and the amendments will be made. As far as plant, we are keen to be in a position where our fleet is up and ready, and I'm sure that we have received that assurance from fleet themselves that we will be in a good position at the start of the winter in terms of our gritters, and I've no reason to doubt that will be the case. Councillor Miller, you made mention of gritters there. You had identified 4 gritters that we have. The 4 gritters are 4x4 dedicated gritters. We do have 3 other lorries with demountable gritters on them. Retaining a workforce is quite difficult. We currently have 1 vacancy at present that's just been advertised, and hopefully we get somebody in to replace that before the start of the winter. Salt bins, we generally try and get salt bins out to places that they're requested. Obviously, if everybody requests them, it soon becomes an issue of resource, and we have to prioritise where they'll go and the reasoning for why they are in certain places. The self-help scheme, yes, if the members of the public are, or ideally community groups, when people apply to suggest where they will be wanting to, whether it's a few streets, 3 streets, whatever, they have to kind of form themselves in a wee group with a leader to make that application. and requesting the equipment and things that they would require to undertake that. So the more people that are willing to do that, the better. It would be addition to anything that we can or would be able to do. The footpaths in Broadford, Portree and Uig. The footpaths in Broadford, Portree and Uig, they are down to Bear. It's their responsibility to grit the, apologise for that, to grit the footpaths adjacent to the trunk road. It's part of their contract. So any footpath that is adjacent to the trunk road is their responsibility, not ours, to undertake that. In terms of the public's perception of gritting operations between Bear and the council, fortunately Bear has the resource to undertake. They undertake a 24-hour operation on the trunk road network, whereas we only operate between 6 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock at night on our primary routes. So there's a period of time of 9 hours where Bear could be merrily gritting their road, but ours will be sitting there untreated or not receiving any further treatment. So they have the advantage that they are continuously treating their routes, whereas we have this built-in delay of potentially 9 hours overnight where nothing happens, which is a significant advantage, particularly when snow conditions. I'm not sure if I've missed anything.
No, I think you've picked up anything, but I'm going to let Councillor Muller, as usual, have the last word.
I don't know if it'll be the last word, but I just thanks for that explanation, because I thought that's why I asked the question about the pavements along the trunk road. And if my memory serves me right, the pavements coming in Viewfield Road and out in Megan Road were never treated by Trunk Roads Authority last year. So I just wondered, Chairman, could maybe our ward manager or Gordon, as the roads operations manager for Skye, could maybe be writing to Bear to ensure that they fulfil their obligations to have the footways properly treated if they're needed to be treated during the oncoming winter, if that could be possible, because I think they neglected their duties last year, and I think the poor old council, as usual, got the blame for not treating the pavements when in fact it's not within their jurisdiction. And we have a significant amount of pavements going through Broadford and Portree specifically, but also, of course, Uig as well. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I'm sure that we can make representation to Bear through Willie, and just ask for that to be picked up.
I'm sure it will be a contractual obligation within their term contract.
Okay, Gordon. Once again, thank you very much for that update. And as I said, there's plenty of information out there for members of the public, and hopefully they'll avail themselves of it. And we as members can also point them in the direction of the council website where they can get that detailed information. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, members, finally, ward discretionary budget. We're asked to note the areas that we've funded to date in this financial year. And that brings us to the end of our area committee. Can I thank you all once again for all your contributions? And no doubt we'll see you all very soon.